My name is Elisa, and I am 32 years old. Last year, I won $12 million in the lottery. Instead of telling my critical family immediately, I decided to keep it secret until Thanksgiving. I thought it would be the perfect moment to share my good fortune. Little did I know that one cruel phone call from my mother would change everything. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you are from and if you would keep a lottery win secret from your family too. And please subscribe if you want to hear stories about life-changing moments that turned out differently than expected. Before the lottery, my life was painfully ordinary. I worked as a mid-level office administrator at a manufacturing company in Milwaukee. The job paid just enough to cover my modest one-bedroom apartment, my used Toyota, and basic necessities. Every 2 weeks my paycheck would arrive and almost immediately disappear to bills and expenses. I lived paycheck to paycheck like millions of other Americans, always dreaming of something more, but never quite able to reach it. My family situation was complicated at best. My father passed away when I was 15 from a sudden heart attack, leaving my mother devastated. 2 years later, she remarried Walter, a successful business owner with a daughter of his own, Jessica, who was 3 years younger than me. I also have an older brother, David, who is 5 years my senior. From the outside, we might have looked like a perfect blended family, but the reality was far different. My mother changed after marrying Walter. She became obsessed with status, with appearances, with what other people thought. And unfortunately, in her eyes, I was the family disappointment. David had followed our father into medicine, becoming a cardiologist at a prestigious hospital in Chicago. Jessica, despite being my step-sister, had been embraced fully by my mother, especially after she graduated from law school and joined a top firm in New York. Both of them were considered the family success stories paraded out at every gathering, their accomplishments announced to anyone who would listen. And then there was me, the underachiever, the one who tried college twice but dropped out both times due to anxiety and financial pressure, the one who worked an ordinary job and lived in an ordinary apartment, the one my mother called only when she needed money for some family expense, or when she wanted to remind me how I should be more like David or Jessica. The last Thanksgiving before my lottery win was particularly painful. I still remember sitting at the elegant dining table in my mother and Walter's suburban home, listening to everyone discuss their achievements. David talked about the new cardiac procedure he had pioneered, while Jessica discussed a high-profile case her firm had just won. My mother beamed with pride. When it came my turn to share, I mentioned I had received a small promotion at work. The table went quiet for an uncomfortable moment before my mother said, "Well, I suppose that is nice, dear," in a tone that made it clear it was anything but. Later that evening, as I was helping with dishes, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "When are you going to do something meaningful with your life, Elisa?" she asked, scrubbing a pan with unnecessary vigor. "Your brother and sister are making something of themselves. They make me proud every day. But you just seem content to waste your potential." Her words stung as they always did, but I had grown accustomed to the pain. I had learned to nod, to smile thinly, to change the subject. What I had not learned was how to make her see me, really see me, not as a disappointment, but as a person with my own dreams and struggles. That was my family dynamic, year after year, holiday after holiday. I was the outsider, the one who did not quite fit, the one who was tolerated rather than celebrated. It wore me down over time, chipped away at my self-confidence, made me question my worth. Then came the day that changed everything. It was an ordinary Tuesday in March. I had gone out to grab lunch from the deli near my office. As I was paying for my sandwich, I remembered it was lottery day. I played every week just $2, a small indulgence that gave me a moment of hope, a brief fantasy of escape. The cashier, an older woman named Gina, who knew my regular order, smiled as I requested a lottery ticket. "Feeling lucky today, Elisa?" she asked, printing out my ticket. I shrugged, tucking it into my wallet alongside the others. I had not checked yet. Not particularly, but you never know, right? That evening alone in my apartment, I remembered the tickets. I pulled them out, opened my laptop, and began checking the numbers against the lottery website. The first 2 tickets were duds as expected. Then I checked the third one, the one I had purchased that day. The first number matched. Then the second. By the third match, my hands were shaking. Fourth, fifth, sixth number all matching. The special number matched as well. I stared at the screen, then back at my ticket, then at the screen again. According to this, I had just won the jackpot, $12 million. I remember laughing, a slightly hysterical sound in my empty apartment. This had to be a mistake. People like me, ordinary people with ordinary lives, did not win the lottery. That happened to other people, lucky people, special people, not me. I checked the numbers a dozen more times. I Googled the winning numbers to verify I was on the correct website. I even took a screenshot of the webpage, afraid that somehow the numbers would change if I looked away. But they did not change. I had really won. The next day was a blur. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did. I contacted the lottery office, followed their instructions to validate my ticket. They confirmed what still seemed impossible: I was indeed the sole winner of the $12 million jackpot. Over the following weeks, I met with lottery officials, signed documents, and arranged for the payout. I chose the lump sum option rather than payments over time, which reduced the amount but still left me with about $7 million after taxes. At their recommendation, I also met with a financial advisor and a lawyer, both specializing in sudden wealth. The financial advisor, a woman named Marianne, looked me straight in the eye during our first meeting. The hardest part of winning the lottery isn't managing the money, she told me. It's managing the people who will suddenly want a piece of it. Her words struck me like a physical blow because I knew immediately who those people would be: my family. My mother, who already asked for money despite having a wealthy husband. My brother, who would undoubtedly have opinions about how I should spend or invest it. My sister, who would suddenly find me interesting after years of barely acknowledging my existence. That night, after meeting with Marianne, I made the decision that would change everything. I would keep my winnings secret, at least for a while. I would tell no one, not even my closest friends. I would make my plans quietly, set up my new life carefully, and only when I was ready, when I was secure, would I share my news with my family. I chose Thanksgiving as my reveal date. It seemed perfect, symbolic even. The holiday centered around gratitude, around family, around abundance. I imagined telling them over dessert, seeing their shock, their surprise, maybe even their respect. I imagined finally being seen as successful in my mother's eyes. But more importantly, I imagined setting terms. This would be my chance to redefine our family dynamic. I would help them, yes, but on my terms, not theirs. I would be generous but not a doormat. I would finally have the power to demand the respect I had never received. That was the plan anyway. A plan born of years of hurt, of being sidelined, of being the family afterthought. A plan that would have to remain secret for 8 months until Thanksgiving arrived. A plan that, though I did not know it yet, would face its greatest test not from my ability to keep the secret, but from the very people I was hiding it from. The first thing I did with my new fortune was nothing. For 2 full weeks I lived exactly as I had before, going to work, coming home to my small apartment, watching the same shows on Netflix, eating the same inexpensive meals. I needed time to absorb the reality of my situation, to let the shock wear off, to think clearly about what came next. During those weeks, I educated myself. I read books about financial management. I researched investment strategies. I studied the stories of lottery winners who had lost everything and those who had thrived. The difference I discovered was often not luck but planning, discipline, and maintaining privacy. With Marianne's help, I created a comprehensive financial plan. First, I would set aside enough money to live comfortably but not extravagantly for the next 5 years. Then I would invest the majority of my winnings in a diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, real estate, and other stable investments. A portion would go to charitable causes I cared about. And finally, I would establish a separate fund for my family to be revealed at Thanksgiving. My next step was to address my living situation. While I loved the security of my job, I had always dreamed of being a writer. With my new financial cushion, I could finally pursue that dream. I submitted my 2 weeks' notice, explaining that I had decided to try freelance work and had saved enough to give it a shot. My boss seemed surprised but wished me well. Several colleagues commented that they wished they had the courage to follow their dreams too, if only they knew. Finding a new place to live was trickier. I wanted to upgrade, but not so dramatically that it would raise questions. I settled on a lovely 3-bedroom house in a secure, gated community about 30 minutes from my old apartment. It was beautiful but not ostentatious, expensive but not so much that people would immediately wonder how I afforded it. When asked, I planned to say I had found an incredible deal and was renting. Moving day was surreal. I had so few possessions that the moving truck seemed almost empty. My furniture, secondhand and worn, looked out of place in the spacious rooms of my new home. That afternoon I went shopping. I bought new furniture, artwork, kitchen appliances, even plants, filling my house with beautiful things that made me happy every time I looked at them. Next came personal changes. I joined a gym with a personal trainer who helped me develop a fitness routine. I bought new clothes that actually fit my body rather than whatever was on sale. I visited a salon for a proper haircut rather than trimming it myself. These changes were subtle, nothing that screamed I'm rich now, but enough to make me feel different, more confident, more put together. The most important investment I made, though, was in therapy. Finding Dr. Lillian Hayes was a turning point. Twice a week, I sat in her comfortable office and poured out years of family trauma, unpacking the criticism, the comparisons, the subtle and not so subtle messages that I was somehow less than my siblings, less successful, less worthy. What you are describing, Dr. Hayes said during one session, is a family system that assigned you a role, the role of the underachiever, the one who needs help, the one who doesn't quite measure up. That role served a purpose in your family dynamic. It allowed your mother and siblings to feel superior, to bond over helping or criticizing you. The question now is, are you ready to step out of that role, even if it disrupts the entire system? Her question haunted me. Was I ready? Changing myself was one thing. Changing how my family saw me, how they treated me, that was something else entirely. But with each passing week, as I grew stronger physically and emotionally, as I began to recognize my own worth independent of their approval, the answer became clear. Yes, I was ready. More than ready. I was determined. As my life transformed, I had to be careful about who I let in. I maintained minimal contact with my family, making excuses about being busy with work whenever they called, which wasn't often. I lost touch with most of my old friends, partly by design, partly because our lives were now so different. But I did make one new friend, Kate, a neighbor who was a freelance graphic designer. We connected immediately over our shared creative interests, and after a few months of growing friendship, I took a risk and told her about my lottery win. "Holy crap," was her eloquent response, followed by, "That explains the amazing espresso machine in your kitchen." Kate became my confidant, the one person who knew my secret, who understood the complexity of my situation with my family. She never asked for money or treated me differently, which confirmed I had chosen wisely in trusting her. "So what's the plan for Thanksgiving?" she asked one evening, as we shared wine on my back patio. "Are you really going to just drop this bomb on your family over turkey?" I nodded, sipping my wine. "That's the plan. I've set up accounts for all of them, college funds for my nieces and nephews. I'm going to tell them everything, explain that I wanted time to set things up properly, and then we can all celebrate together." Kate looked skeptical. "And you don't think they'll be hurt or angry that you kept this secret for 8 months? "Maybe initially," I admitted. "But once they see how much thought I've put into helping them, I think they'll understand." Kate didn't seem convinced, but she raised her glass in a toast. "To your optimism, then, may it be rewarded." As Thanksgiving approached, I practiced saying no. It sounds strange, but it was something I had always struggled with, especially with my family. When my mother called asking for a contribution to a family cruise they were planning, I politely declined. When David asked if I could help with a deposit for his son's private school, I suggested he look into scholarship options. When Jessica sent an invitation to a charity gala with a $400 per plate price tag, I said I couldn't make it. Each refusal was met with surprise, then disappointment, then subtle or not so subtle guilt trips. But I stood firm, knowing that soon I would be able to help them in ways that were sustainable and healthy, not just by being the family ATM when needed. The hardest part of these months was the deception. I had never been a good liar, and creating explanations for the changes in my life required constant vigilance. My new house was a great deal I'd found through a friend of a friend. My ability to work from home was due to a new freelance contract. My new clothes and haircut were because I'm finally prioritizing self-care. None of these were outright lies exactly, but they were omissions of the full truth. Each one added to the weight of my secret, made me more eager for Thanksgiving to arrive, so I could finally be honest with the people who, despite everything, I still loved and wanted in my life. What I didn't realize then was how much I had already changed, not just externally but internally. The woman I had been 8 months ago, the one desperate for her family's approval, the one who measured her worth by their standards, she was fading away. In her place was someone stronger, someone who had begun to recognize her own value regardless of their validation. This new version of me, this evolving Elisa, was the one preparing to face her family at Thanksgiving, and she had no idea of the storm that was about to hit. October brought the first hints of trouble. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted something. After perfunctory inquiries about my health and work, she got to the point. "The roof on the house needs replacing," she said. "Walter says it will cost about $15,000. David has already offered to contribute $3,000, and Jessica says she can manage $5,000. We were hoping you might be able to help with the rest." In the past, I would have immediately felt guilty, would have mentally reviewed my budget to see what I could possibly sacrifice to come up with even a small contribution. This time, I took a deep breath before responding. "I'm sorry to hear about the roof, Mom, but I can't contribute right now. I've had some unexpected expenses with the move and changing jobs." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "I see," she finally said, her disappointment palpable. "Well, I suppose we'll figure something out. Your brother and sister will just have to cover more. They've always been so generous with family needs." The jab was intentional, designed to make me feel inadequate compared to my siblings. It had worked countless times before, but not today. Today, I simply acknowledged her comment and changed the subject, asking about her garden club instead. The conversation ended soon after, with my mother clearly confused by my lack of guilt response. David called next, just 2 days later. He wasted no time getting to the point. "Mom told me about your conversation," he said, his doctor's voice full of authority. "What's going on with you, Elisa? She needs help with this roof, and you know her retirement doesn't cover these kinds of expenses." "I'm aware of the situation," I replied evenly, "but I'm not in a position to help financially right now." David scoffed. "Come on, how expensive can your new place be? It's not like you moved into a mansion. And this freelance work, is it even reliable? Maybe if you had finished college and gotten a real career like Jessica and I did, you wouldn't be struggling all the time." His words hurt as they always had, but this time the pain was different. Before, it had hurt because part of me believed he was right. Now it hurt because I realized how little he knew or understood me, how quick he was to judge how deeply he had bought into the family narrative about who I was. "My finances are not your concern, David," I said, surprising myself with my firmness. "I'm sorry I can't help with the roof, but that's my final answer." He was stunned into momentary silence before launching into a lecture about family responsibility and how disappointed our father would have been. I let him talk, no longer bothered by invocations of our father's disappointment, knowing Dad would have been proud of me for standing up for myself. When David finally ran out of steam, I simply said goodbye and hung up. The calls continued throughout October and early November. My mother phoned weekly, sometimes to directly ask for money, other times to subtly remind me of family financial responsibilities. There was the college fund for David's children, the family vacation home that needed maintenance, the upcoming holiday expenses. Each time I declined politely but firmly. Each time my mother's disappointment and confusion grew. Jessica's approach was more subtle. She invited me to lunch at an expensive restaurant, then spent the entire meal talking about her recent promotion, her new car, the vacation she and her husband were planning to Bali. She never directly asked for money, but made several comments about how she wished I could experience these things someday. Before the check came, she mentioned a business opportunity, a startup a friend was launching that needed investors. "I immediately thought of you," she said, stirring her coffee. I know you don't have much to invest, but even a small stake could grow significantly. I'm putting in 50,000 myself. I smiled, thanked her for thinking of me, and declined. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. This wasn't the Elisa she was used to dealing with. As Thanksgiving approached, I finalized my plans. I had worked with my financial advisor and lawyer to set up generous but sensible gifts for my family. For my mother and Walter, a substantial contribution to their retirement fund. For David and Jessica, college funds for their children, and a debt payoff plan for any lingering student loans. I had prepared envelopes containing letters, explaining everything along with symbolic first checks. I had also rehearsed my announcement, practiced the words I would say as I shared my news. I imagined their surprised faces, their joy, perhaps even a newfound respect. I pictured us finally having a relationship based on equality rather than their perceived superiority. Then 1 week before Thanksgiving, everything changed. I was at home finalizing the details for the dinner I would attend at my mother's house when my phone rang. It was her, and I answered with a light heart, excited that the secret would soon be over. Elisa, my mother's voice was cold, controlled. I'm calling about Thanksgiving. Yes, I've been meaning to ask what I can bring, I replied, still oblivious to what was coming. That won't be necessary, she said. In fact, your presence won't be necessary either. I froze, certain I had misheard. What do you mean? She sighed a sound. I had heard countless times the sound of her disappointment in me. Walter and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you didn't join us this year. David will be announcing his new position as head of cardiology, and Jessica is bringing her new partner whose family owns half of Manhattan. It's going to be a celebration of achievements, and frankly, Elisa, you have nothing to be thankful for this year. Your constant refusals to help with family expenses, your selfish focus on this writing hobby. Instead of a real job, it's best if you stay away, so you don't bring shame to our gathering. I couldn't speak. The room seemed to spin around me as her words registered. Uninvited, unwanted, a shame to the family. Mom, I finally managed my voice, barely audible. You can't mean that. Oh, but I do, she continued, warming to her theme. Look at your brother and sister. David's saving lives, Jessica, making partner at her firm. They can bring pride to our Thanksgiving table. What would you bring? Stories about your little apartment and your make-believe career, no, Elisa. This year we need a break from your disappointing choices. The call ended shortly after with me, too stunned to argue, too hurt to defend myself. I sat in my beautiful new home surrounded by the evidence of my success and felt more alone than I ever had before. Later that night, after crying until I had no tears left, I called Kate. She came over immediately, bringing ice cream and wine, the traditional provisions for a broken heart. I told her everything, my voice hollow, my spirit crushed. Your mother is a piece of work, Kate said when I finished, her face flushed with anger on my behalf. And after all the planning you did for them, all the money you were going to share. I nodded, staring into my wine glass. I really thought things would be different once they knew. I thought the money would change how they see me. Kate reached across the table and took my hand. The money has already changed something important, Elisa. It's changed how you see yourself. You're stronger now, more confident. You don't need their approval like you used to. She was right, I realized. For all the pain of my mother's rejection, I wasn't destroyed by it. Hurt, yes. Angry, definitely. But not broken, not questioning my worth. That was new. That was growth. So what will you do now? Kate asked. Still tell them about the money. I considered the question, turning it over in my mind. The envelopes sat on my desk upstairs, ready to be distributed at a Thanksgiving dinner I was now banned from attending. The careful plans I had made, the speech I had practiced, all of it useless now. I don't know, I admitted. But whatever I decide, it won't be what I had planned. Things have changed. I had no idea then just how much they were about to change for all of us. The next few days passed in a blur of emotion. I cycled through shock, grief, anger, and finally a strange sense of clarity. My mother's cruel words had torn away the last illusions I had about our relationship. For years I had clung to the hope that deep down she loved and valued me as much as my siblings. Now I had to face the truth in her eyes. I would always be the disappointment, the one who didn't measure up regardless of what I achieved or acquired. The night after the phone call, I barely slept. I lay awake replaying her words, feeling the sting of each one. By morning, my eyes were swollen from crying, but something had shifted inside me. I called Dr. Hayes and scheduled an emergency session for that afternoon. She uninvited me to Thanksgiving. I told Dr. Hayes, my voice still rough from crying. She said I would bring shame to their celebration of achievements because I have nothing to be thankful for this year. Dr. Hayes listened quietly, her expression compassionate but unsurprised. "And how are you feeling about that?" "Devastated. Furious. Betrayed." I paused, considering, but also strangely relieved. Like, now I can stop pretending that things might change, that they might eventually see me differently. Dr. Hayes nodded. "Sometimes the most painful moments bring the greatest clarity. Your mother has shown you exactly who she is and how she values you. The question now is, what will you do with that information?" That question followed me home. What would I do? The original plan to reveal my lottery win at Thanksgiving was clearly off the table, but I still had options. I could call my mother back and confront her. I could reach out to David or Jessica to see if they knew about or agreed with my exclusion. I could simply let it go, keep my secret, and move forward without them. None of these options felt right. I wanted neither a confrontation nor a quiet surrender. I wanted my truth to be known, but on my terms, not in a desperate bid for their approval. That evening, Kate came over again. We sat in my backyard, the November air cool but pleasant, a fire pit keeping us warm as we talked through possibilities. What if Kate suggested sipping her tea? You reveal your win in a way that makes it impossible for them to ignore or dismiss. Something public, something that forces them to confront their treatment of you. The idea sparked something in me. Not revenge exactly, but a chance to reclaim the narrative, to stop being the family disappointment on their terms. Like what I asked, intrigued. Kate thought for a moment. Social media. A post about your gratitude for your new life, maybe with a photo that hints at your changed circumstances. Subtle enough that it wouldn't scream "I won the lottery" to casual observers, but clear enough that your family would get the message. I considered it. I rarely posted on social media, but I did have accounts that my family followed. A carefully crafted post could indeed send a message without appearing vindictive or petty. "I like it," I said slowly, "but I'd need to think carefully about the timing, the content." We spent the next hour brainstorming ideas for the perfect post. By the end of the evening, a plan had begun to form. But there was another decision I needed to make first, a more important one. The following day, I contacted my financial advisor and lawyer. I explained what had happened and my decision to modify the gifts I had planned for my family. "I still want to establish the college funds for my nieces and nephews," I told them. "They shouldn't suffer because of their parents' behavior. But for my mother, brother, and sister, I want to create more structured trusts with specific conditions." The new plan was more protected. The college funds would be administered by a third party, ensuring the money could only be used for education. For the adults, instead of the outright gifts I had originally planned, I established trusts that would provide annual distributions based on certain conditions, including participation in family therapy sessions with me. It was not about punishing them, I explained to my advisors, but about establishing healthier dynamics. If they wanted access to my financial help, they would need to work on our relationships first. With that decision made, I turned my attention to Thanksgiving itself. The thought of spending it alone in my house, knowing my family was gathered without me, was unbearable. I needed an alternative, something that would fill the day with positive experiences, rather than lonely reflection. "What about a trip?" Kate suggested when I shared my dilemma. "Go somewhere amazing, somewhere you've always wanted to visit. Take incredible photos. Live your best life while they're stuck with their turkey and judgment." The idea resonated immediately. I had always wanted to visit Hawaii but had never been able to afford it. Now nothing stood in my way. Within hours, I had booked a 5-star resort on Maui for the Thanksgiving weekend, arranged for a luxury ocean view suite, and scheduled several exclusive experiences, including a private helicopter tour and a sunset dinner cruise. As I finalized these plans, I felt a weight lifting. This Thanksgiving would not be about rejection or family drama. It would be about celebrating my new life, my independence, my freedom from the need for their approval. The night before I was set to leave for Hawaii, I sat down to compose my social media post. It had to be perfect, subtle enough to maintain some privacy, but clear enough to send a message. After several drafts, I settled on a simple approach that I would post from Hawaii, a photo of me enjoying a luxurious breakfast on my private balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean, with a caption about being thankful for new beginnings and the courage to value myself even when others didn't. I packed my bags, including several new outfits I had bought specifically for the trip, my camera for capturing the perfect images, and a heart that was bruised but healing. As I locked up my house and called an Uber to take me to the airport, I felt an unexpected sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I was defining my own worth, creating my own happiness independent of my family's assessment. The Elisa boarding that plane was not the same woman who had bought a lottery ticket 8 months earlier. She was stronger, wiser, more sure of herself, and she was about to teach her family a lesson they would never forget. The moment my plane touched down in Maui, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The tropical air, warm and fragrant, greeted me as I stepped off the jetway. This was the farthest I had ever traveled from home, a journey that would have been impossible in my previous life. Already, this felt like a victory. The resort exceeded every expectation. My suite was larger than my old apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a panoramic ocean view. The king-sized bed was draped in fine linens, the bathroom featured a soaking tub and rainfall shower, and the private balcony came complete with a small infinity pool. It was luxury beyond anything I had experienced before. That first evening, I ordered room service, something I had always considered an unnecessary extravagance. As I ate fresh seafood and sipped champagne on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I pulled out my phone and checked social media out of habit. There they were, my family posting about Thanksgiving preparations. My mother shared photos of her table settings, elaborate and perfect as always. David posted about being thankful for his successful career and beautiful family. Jessica shared a picture of the expensive wine she was bringing and her new boyfriend in a tailored suit. None of them mentioned my absence. To any outside observer, it would seem like I had never been part of their family at all. I put my phone away, refusing to let their posts dim the beauty of my evening. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving, and I had my own celebration planned, one that would culminate in the post that would change everything. Thanksgiving Day dawned bright and clear. I woke early, ordered a lavish breakfast to be delivered to my balcony, and prepared myself mentally for what was to come. The meal arrived precisely on time, a spread of tropical fruits, fresh pastries, gourmet coffee, and eggs Benedict. I arranged everything carefully, positioning my coffee cup to catch the morning light, making sure the ocean was visible in the background. Then I took the photo, several versions, until I found the perfect one. In it, I looked relaxed, content, the sun highlighting my new haircut, my simple but expensive watch visible on my wrist, the luxurious breakfast and stunning view telling a story of success and prosperity. I spent several hours crafting the perfect caption, wanting to strike just the right tone, not vindictive but not submissive either. Finally, I settled on, "This Thanksgiving, I'm grateful for the courage to walk away from people who never valued me, and the strength to create a life that brings me joy." Sometimes the greatest blessing is realizing you don't need the approval of others to be worthy of love and success. To everyone celebrating today, I hope you're surrounded by people who see your true worth. Number. Blessed number, new traditions, number self-love. I posted it mid-afternoon when I knew my family would be finishing their Thanksgiving meal, checking their phones during that lull between dinner and dessert. Then I put my phone on silent, placed it in the safe in my room, and went to enjoy my scheduled massage at the resort spa. 2 hours later, thoroughly relaxed and deliberately avoiding my phone, I joined a small group of fellow solo travelers for the resort's Thanksgiving dinner. We shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed a meal that rivaled anything my mother could have prepared. These strangers showed more interest in me, more genuine curiosity about my life and dreams than my family had in years. It was nearly midnight when I returned to my room and finally retrieved my phone. The screen was alight with notifications more than I had ever received before. My post had garnered hundreds of likes and dozens of supportive comments from acquaintances and even strangers who resonated with my message of self-worth. But what took my breath away was the number of missed calls and messages from my family. 66 missed calls in total. 20 from my mother, 18 from David, 15 from Jessica, and the rest from extended family members who had apparently been alerted to the situation. The voicemails evolved over the hours. My mother's first message was angry, demanding to know where I was and what I thought I was doing posting such a dramatic and attention-seeking photo. By her fifth call, her tone had shifted to concern, asking if I was in some kind of trouble that had led to my unusual behavior. By the 10th, she was tearfully asking how I could afford such a luxury vacation and why I hadn't told her about whatever was going on in my life. David's messages were predictably authoritative at first, lecturing me about how I had upset our mother and how childish it was to post passive-aggressive messages on social media. His later calls became increasingly curious with direct questions about my financial situation and offers to help me manage whatever windfall I might have received. Jessica's approach was the most transparent. Her very first message congratulated me on my apparent success and immediately suggested we do lunch when I returned so she could hear all about it. Each subsequent message became more pressing, more ingratiating, culminating in a direct inquiry about whether I might be interested in investing in her friend's startup now. The extended family calls were a mix of genuine surprise and opportunistic outreach. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. An uncle remembered a loan he had given me in college and thought now might be a good time to repay it with interest, of course. I sat on my balcony listening to message after message, watching the moonlight dance on the ocean waves, and felt an odd mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The post had achieved exactly what I had intended. My family now knew, or at least strongly suspected, that my financial situation had dramatically improved. Their perception of me had shifted overnight from disappointment to person of interest. But there was no joy in this revelation, no sense of triumph. Instead, I felt a profound grief for the family I had wished for, but never had the unconditional love I had sought but never found. These calls, these sudden attempts to reconnect, they weren't about concern for me as a person. They were about what I now represented, what I could potentially provide. Kate texted around 1 a.m, "Your post is blowing up. How many calls from the family so far?" I replied with the number and a brief summary of the messages. "Predictable," she wrote back. "What's your next move?" It was a good question, one I hadn't fully answered for myself yet. Part of me wanted to ignore them all, to extend my stay in Hawaii indefinitely, to build a new life far from their manipulations and judgments. But another part, the part that had worked so hard in therapy, knew that running away wouldn't heal the wounds or help me grow. "I'm going to give myself the rest of this trip to enjoy in peace," I texted back. "Then I'll deal with them when I'm ready on my terms." "Perfect," Kate replied. "Remember, you hold the power now, not just because of the money but because you've finally seen the truth about them and about yourself." She was right. The real power wasn't in my bank account, but in my newfound clarity. For the first time, I saw my family exactly as they were, without the distortion of hope or the blur of insecurity. And more importantly, I saw myself clearly too, recognized my own worth independent of their validation. That night, I slept better than I had in months, lulled by the sound of distant waves and the knowledge that I was finally free of the need for their approval. Whatever came next would be on my terms, in my time, according to my values. The money hadn't bought me happiness, but it had bought me something perhaps more valuable: the chance to redefine myself and my relationships on my own terms. The storm of family reaction was just beginning, but for now, I was safe in the eye of it, gathering my strength for the confrontations to come. 3 days after my Thanksgiving post, I returned home from Hawaii refreshed and resolved. My phone had continued to explode with messages from family, each more urgent than the last. I had responded to none of them, giving myself the gift of uninterrupted peace. But now, back in my own space, I knew it was time to face the situation I had created. I spent my first day home settling in, unpacking, and consulting with Dr. Hayes about the best approach moving forward. We agreed that I would respond to my family members individually, starting with my mother, and that I would maintain firm boundaries throughout these conversations. Remember, Dr. Hayes advised, this is not about punishing them or seeking revenge. It's about establishing new, healthier patterns of interaction. Be honest about how their treatment has affected you, but stay focused on the future, on what kind of relationship might be possible moving forward. On my second day back, I felt ready. I sat in my home office, a space I had designed for comfort and calm, and called my mother. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been sitting by the phone. Elisa. Her voice was tentative, lacking its usual confidence. Finally, we have been so worried. There was no need to worry, Mom, I replied calmly. I was simply enjoying my Thanksgiving vacation. In Hawaii, her tone sharpened slightly. At what appeared to be a very expensive resort, Elisa. What is going on? Where did you get the money for such a trip? I took a deep breath. I won the lottery, Mom. Back in March. $12 million. The silence that followed was so complete I thought for a moment the call had dropped. Then came a small strangled sound, something between a gasp and a cough. 12 million, she finally managed. And you kept this from us for 8 months. Why would you do such a thing? This was the moment I had prepared for the question I had anticipated. I kept my voice steady as I answered. I needed time, Mom. Time to process what had happened, to make wise financial decisions, to prepare myself emotionally. And yes, time to consider how this would affect my relationships, especially with family. What does that mean? Her defensiveness was creeping back in. Are you suggesting we would have treated you differently because of money? Aren't you treating me differently right now? I countered gently. A week ago, you told me I had nothing to be thankful for, that I would bring shame to your Thanksgiving table. You uninvited me from a family gathering because I didn't meet your standards of success. And now, after one social media post suggesting my circumstances have changed, you've called me 20 times in 3 days. Another long silence followed. I waited, giving her space to process, to formulate a response. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, less certain. I may have been harsh on the phone last week, she admitted reluctantly. I was frustrated by your refusals to help with family expenses, especially when David and Jessica were contributing. I couldn't contribute then because I was setting up more substantial help for later, I explained. I had planned to tell everyone at Thanksgiving, to surprise you all with gifts I had arranged. College funds for the kids, retirement help for you, and Walter, debt relief for David and Jessica. That was the plan until you uninvited me. I heard a sharp intake of breath, then what sounded like muffled crying. My mother rarely cried, at least not in front of others. The sound tugged at my heart, but I remained firm. Elisa, I am so sorry, she said when she could speak again. I had no idea. We can still have a family dinner. You can still tell everyone. We can pretend last week never happened. That's not possible, Mom, I said gently but firmly. What happened last week was real. The things you said were real. The way you've treated me for years has been real. Money doesn't erase that history. It just gives me the freedom to decide what kind of relationship I want moving forward. The conversation continued for over an hour. There were moments of defensiveness, of attempted guilt trips, of bargaining. But there were also moments of genuine remorse, of painful self-reflection, and eventually of tentative understanding. By the end, we had agreed to meet in person the following week, along with a family therapist I would arrange. And the money, she asked, before we hung up. The gifts you mentioned? We'll discuss all of that in therapy, I said. But Mom, please understand, any financial help will be tied to building healthier relationships. I won't fund the same dynamics that have hurt me for so long. My conversation with David came next. As expected, he began with authority and ended with humility. His initial approach was to question my financial decisions, to offer his expertise to help me manage this windfall appropriately. When I firmly but politely declined his help and instead outlined the conditions under which I would provide financial assistance to his family, he grew quiet. I never realized how I came across to you, he said, near the end of our call. I thought I was being the responsible older brother giving you guidance. I didn't see it as criticism or judgment. Intent and impact can be very different things, I replied, quoting Dr. Hayes. We'll have a chance to talk more about this in therapy if you're willing to participate. After a moment's hesitation, he agreed. Jessica was the most transparent of the three. She congratulated me effusively on my win, immediately began discussing investment opportunities and social connections she could facilitate, and seemed genuinely confused when I redirected the conversation toward our relationship. Issues. But that's all in the past, she said dismissively. We're adults now. We should focus on the future, on all the exciting possibilities your new wealth creates for both of us. The future of our relationship depends on acknowledging and addressing the past, I insisted. I'm setting boundaries now, Jessica. I won't be an investor in your friends' startups. I won't be your connection to wealth or status. I'm your stepsister, and that's either valuable to you on its own or it isn't. Her silence told me everything I needed to know, but to her credit, she too eventually agreed to family therapy. Over the next few days, I had similar conversations with extended family members who had reached out after my post. To each I was polite but firm. Yes, I had won the lottery. No, I was not giving out loans. No, I was not investing in business ventures. Yes, I was establishing college funds for all the children in the family. And yes, I was requiring family therapy for any adult family member who wanted access to financial assistance beyond that. Some accepted these terms graciously. Others grew angry or tried manipulation. A few stopped responding entirely once they realized I wouldn't be an easy source of cash. Each reaction was informative, revealing the true nature of our connection. Through it all, Kate was my steadfast support, coming over with takeout food on especially difficult days, offering a listening ear and encouraging words. Dr. Hayes provided professional guidance, helping me navigate the complex emotions these conversations triggered, and reminding me to practice self-care. The most surprising outcome of these confrontations was not the reactions of my family, which were largely predictable, but my own sense of empowerment. Each time I stated my boundaries clearly, each time I refused to be manipulated or guilted, I grew stronger, more confident in my worth beyond my bank account. By the end of that intense week of conversations, I had established new terms for my family relationships. Some family members had chosen to accept these terms, beginning the difficult work of rebuilding trust and connection. Others had withdrawn, unwilling to engage on any basis other than financial gain. And I was at peace with both outcomes, knowing that I had acted in accordance with my values and my newfound sense of self-worth. The money had changed everything, yes, but not in the way I had initially imagined. It hadn't bought me my family's love or respect. Instead, it had given me the freedom to demand those things as a condition of my continued presence in their lives. It had shifted the power dynamic, allowing me to set terms rather than accept whatever treatment was offered. As I prepared for our first family therapy session scheduled for the following week, I felt nervous but ready. This was just the beginning of a long process of healing and transformation, not just for me, but potentially for my entire family system. Whatever happened next, I would face it as this new version of Elisa, the woman who knew her own value, lottery winnings or not. 6 months have passed since that fateful Thanksgiving, since the phone call that changed everything, since the social media post that exposed the truth. 6 months of therapy, of difficult conversations, of tears and revelations, and cautious rebuilding. 6 months of learning to be wealthy, yes, but more importantly, learning to be worthy in my own eyes. My life today bears little resemblance to the one I lived a year ago. I wake each morning in my beautiful home, spend my days writing the novel I always dreamed of creating, and go to sleep each night with a sense of peace I never thought possible. The money made much of this possible. I won't deny that. Financial security is a privilege that has removed barriers and opened doors, but the deeper changes, the ones that matter most, came from within. My relationship with my family has been transformed, though not in the way I once imagined. There are no perfect reconciliations, no movie ending where everything is forgiven and forgotten. Instead, there is something more real, more honest, and ultimately more valuable, a connection based on truth, rather than performance, on mutual respect, rather than hierarchy. My mother and I meet weekly, alternating between therapy sessions and casual lunches. In therapy, we unpack decades of harmful patterns of her projecting her insecurities onto me, of my desperate attempts to earn her approval. Outside of therapy, we are slowly discovering who we are to each other when those patterns are interrupted. She is learning to see me, really see me, not as an extension of herself or a reflection of her parenting, but as an individual with my own strengths and struggles. And I am learning to see her the same way, to understand the wounds she carries from her own upbringing, the fears that drove her criticism. "I never meant to hurt you," she told me during a recent lunch. "I thought I was motivating you, pushing you toward success like my mother pushed me." "I didn't realize how different you are from me, how my words landed in your heart." "I know, Mom," I replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. "And I never meant to shut you out. I just needed to protect myself until I was strong enough to set boundaries." David and I have found a new footing as well. Without the dynamic of successful brother and struggling sister, we've discovered common interests and complementary perspectives. He still occasionally slips into advice-giving mode, but now he catches himself asks if I want input before offering it. I've found that sometimes I do want his insight now that it comes with respect rather than judgment. Jessica remains the most distant, the most resistant to the new terms of our relationship. She attended therapy for the required minimum to access the trust I established for her children's education, but her engagement was superficial at best. Our interactions remain cordial but limited. I've accepted that some relationships can be improved but not completely healed, and that's okay. The college funds I established for all the nieces and nephews in the family are functioning as planned, administered by a third party to ensure the money is used exclusively for education. I take joy in knowing that regardless of their parents' choices, these children will have opportunities I didn't have. My financial situation has stabilized into a comfortable routine. The majority of my lottery winnings remain invested for long-term growth and security. I live well, but not extravagantly, finding that many of the luxuries I once dreamed of hold less appeal than I expected. Instead, I've discovered joy in using my resources to create meaningful experiences and support causes I believe in. I've established a scholarship for first-generation college students at the community college, where I once studied, funding not just tuition but also living expenses, mental health support, and career counseling. Watching these students thrive, seeing them overcome barriers similar to those I faced, brings me more satisfaction than any material purchase ever could. And love. That came unexpectedly in the form of a literature professor I met at a writing workshop. Michael knew nothing of my lottery win when we first connected over a shared love of classic novels and contemporary poetry. Our relationship developed slowly based on genuine interest and compatibility rather than financial considerations. When I eventually told him about my wealth, his main concern was how it had affected me emotionally, not what it might mean for him materially. His reaction confirmed what my heart already knew: he was someone who saw the real me, someone worthy of trust. The lottery gave me $12 million, but keeping it secret gave me something far more valuable: the chance to see clearly who truly deserved a place in my life, and the strength to make that choice for myself. Money, I've learned, doesn't change who people are. It merely amplifies what was already there. Those who were kind become more generous. Those who were selfish become more entitled. Those who valued you only for what you could provide will value you more when you can provide more, but their love remains conditional, transactional. True connection, I now understand, exists independent of external factors like wealth or status. It's based on seeing and accepting each other as we really are, flaws and all. It's maintained through honest communication, mutual respect, and the courage to be vulnerable. These are lessons no amount of money could buy, truths I had to live to understand. As I look toward the future, I feel neither bitter about the past nor anxious about what comes next. I'm grateful for the lottery win that changed my circumstances, yes, but more grateful for the painful moments that changed my perspective. Both were necessary for me to become who I am today, to create this life that feels authentically mine. If you are watching this and struggling with family dynamics that make you feel less than if you are measuring your worth by others' standards rather than your own, please know this: You do not need $12 million to set comma. Boundaries to demand respect, to walk away from relationships that diminish you. The power to value yourself exists already within you. It may be harder to access without financial security, I acknowledge that privilege, but it is there waiting for you to claim it. What about you? Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members over money issues? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by their bank account or their family's approval. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to break harmful patterns even when it hurts.